Hey friends, I wanted to pop on and share with you some thought processes for working towards a movement or performance goal. So I want to use a single leg squat or a pistol squat example because I know there are a few people here who are really interested in improving their ability to do that. So the way I initially think about it is, okay, what are my prerequisites for this movement? What are my joint prerequisites? So for a pistol squat in particular, we need ankle flexion, ankle dorsiflexion, a lot of knee flexion, a lot of hip flexion. And then, of course, we need active hip flexion in the other hip. So we want to go about establishing what is my biggest priority right now that I can work on. And I just made a post that talks a little bit about this because as we're working on some of our goals, it's really important to not get overwhelmed and spread ourselves too thin. Because if I want to work on hip flexion and ankle flexion, and I'm trying to work on everything else as well, it's unlikely I'm going to be able to devote the time and the effort to really make significant improvements here if I'm focusing everywhere else in my body as well. So what I would recommend, establish your prerequisites needed, focus on the one or two things that will make the biggest difference, and then devote energy, commit to that. And meanwhile, you can do your cars for the rest of the body, you can do other strength training, but focus especially on those big blocks. And it can be hard to establish that. I'm going to help that with some series coming up for single leg stuff. But think about, one of the biggest things I've found in this one in particular is ankle dorsiflexion. Because if that ankle doesn't bend past about here, it really doesn't matter what you're doing at your hip or at your knee. It doesn't matter how much leg strength you have. If this isn't going to bend past here, you're not going to be able to get a deep pistol squat. If this other leg doesn't have the ability to actively flex and hold up, that doesn't matter. So think about the biggest blocks. Now also consider our joint prerequisites just in general. So for example, ankle inversion and eversion is a prerequisite for dorsiflexion. So if your dorsiflexion isn't very good, and it feels like you're just jamming into it and nothing's happening, we probably want to address inversion and eversion. Likewise, if your hip flexion isn't very good, if you get pinching and it just doesn't want to improve, you're probably going to want to address hip rotation, especially internal, but external as well. So I just want to give this as just a little case study. You can think about other movements as well. So something with the upper body, you're going to want to address your shoulder or your elbow or your wrist, whatever the main limiting factor is. With single leg squats, a big limiting factor tends to be ankle dorsiflexion. Then once you have that, you can layer on strength. But it's going to be so much easier and more efficient to build strength when you already have the prerequisites in your joints. You're going to get better feedback from your brain. You're much less likely to get injuries and overuse if your joints function correctly. So you can certainly work strength while you're building the capacity in your joints. That's absolutely fine. I just wouldn't go past your capacity. So if my hip flexion is only this much and then it starts pinching, I wouldn't pick up weight or pick up my other leg and do heavy single leg squats until I've cleared that hip flexion in a way that I can get down there without pain and that I have some control there. So you can absolutely work at the same time mobility and strength. And a lot of the mobility training really is strength training. So I'll finish this off with a quick thing here, which was the moment that this all made perfect sense to me, and of course it involved pistol squats. So I had been working on them for quite a while. I kind of hit a plateau. I went to my first FRC seminar. I determined ankle dorsiflexion, hip rotation were huge, and I crushed them for like 4 months. I worked on them every day, almost every day. And I didn't work on pistol squats at all. Didn't even practice them. And one day I was just messing around. I was like doing these like weird backward crawls, and I found myself doing a backward crawl, and I just like fell into a pistol squat, like by accident. And that's when it made so much sense that once I gave my joints the capacity to express themselves in those ranges, the movement became easy. So you might still have to practice the movement, build strength, but prioritize those joints and only pick 1 or 2 priorities at first. Hammer them. Thanks for watching. Hope this made sense. Please feel free to share any questions, comments, or feedback.